Today's webinar will focus on reporting and analytics, helping you unlock the power of MyEvaluations as we expand with new services and new functionalities to help you take advantage of the data that you're collecting from various sources and how to best align that data that you've collected to meet all your accreditation requirements. We have major points to cover today. There will be an introduction to all the reporting tools that are pertinent for you. This webinar is scheduled for approximately 2 hours to cover all the reporting tools, as well as how to create custom reports. When we're reviewing the reporting tools, we're going to focus on data analysis, performing specific metric tracking, and how to review analytics for program improvements. And at the very end, we're also going to focus on the overall ACGME compliance, which will be part of our regular reporting process as well. So there's quite a lot of integrated items that we're going to review at the same time today. So first area we're going to start focusing on will specifically be on the topic of evaluation. So as I'm going through this webinar, the main focus here is for you to understand administratively what are all the different reports that we can run and what's the purpose of these reports and how do we use these reports for analytics. When I talk about introduction to reporting, it will be focused on one topic at a time, meaning one particular module at a time, so you can understand the functionality of those reports and how they integrate with the dashboard and everything else that we're doing. So first, let's get one item in regards to personal reports out of the way, because this webinar is focused on all of the administrative reports, so what we would call management reports. And I will go through various reporting tips for you, but I want you to realize what I'm showing here on the screen is what a user, whether it's a faculty or a resident, how they would see their own personal evaluation reports. Notice there are no date ranges for them. They just look at all periods, all evaluations. Because some evaluations might be anonymous or confidential, the system will show them what's available for them to generate. They can generate the report simply by clicking on the report and generating, and that's a personal evaluation report. And that's going to be very different from administrative or management reports that you run, because they have a lot more flexibility and they have a lot more customizability in terms of what you can generate as an administrator. And then there are situations where you as an administrator will have different levels of permission for accessing reports as compared to, let's say, the GME office or the medical education office. So permissions can also impact your access to specific data points. And we'll take a look at that as we're going through the details. So now let's put personal evaluation reports aside and let's focus on management reports. And in the world of management reports, there are some basic tips that I want you to carry with you. I've basically broken it up into 4 major tips that you should always keep in mind. And now we're talking about evaluation reports. So the first tip is regarding report date ranges. So on all the reports, we provide you with a date range option where you select a filter of the start date and the end date for generating a report. So the date range on the reports here indicated in red is the default report date range, which is the start of your academic year until today. So assuming the start of your academic year is July 1st, and we're in the 23-24 academic year, and today is May 2nd, 2024, the report will default July 1, 2023 to May 2nd, 2024. So assume that you are looking for an evaluation here indicated in blue that was assigned for the date range April 10th, 2024 till May 15th, 2024. And if you notice that report default date range does not overlap with the evaluation that I'm looking for. In other words, the date range is not inclusive of the evaluation assignment of April 10th to May 15th. So as an administrator, you need to change that report date range to be inclusive. Now, I know today is May 2nd, but I can change that report date range to May 15th or any time after the May 15 end date of the evaluation in order to be inclusive of the data I'm looking for. This is one common trap we see administrators miss, where they're looking for an evaluation that was just assigned in a particular month, and in that month they're looking for the results, but because the month isn't over yet, they're not able to see it because they're not changing the end date of the report. So that's one important point to keep in mind. Always use an inclusive date range when generating a report. The second tip has to do with rotation filters. In all your evaluation reports, you have a rotation filter. Do not select any rotations unless you're specifically looking for results on a specific rotation. Don't select anything. The system will by default include everything. The reason that's important is in the system, you are able to delete rotation names that you're not using. So if last year you had a rotation called medicine ward, but this year you've renamed that rotation, or you create a new rotation that's called IM ward. If you filter for IM ward, you will not see the medicine ward evaluation from last year. So it's best just to leave the rotation filter alone and allow the system to show you all the results and only filter the rotations when you're looking for data for a specific rotation. Now, on all evaluation reports, there is the system's ability to provide you with two evaluation results. In addition to the results for the specific user, whatever the scores they received, there's also a group and a total. Nearly all the reports will show you a group and a total result. The group is always a representative of the average score for the selected group. So, for example, if you select 2 PGY2s, then it's going to show you the average score for the PGY2s in the group. If you select your PGY2s and your PGY3s, several of them, the group average will be the average score for PGY2s and 3s together. The total score, on the other hand, is the score for all the users that have been evaluated with that specific form, irrespective of their PGY level. Now, when you look at your faculty, the group is a representative of all the faculty in the same specialty. So if you're looking at evaluation results of your GI attendings, then the group score will be the average score for GI attendings who've been evaluated with that form. And the total score will be the average score for all the attendings who were evaluated with that specific evaluation form. So group represents a group of users, total represents all of the users evaluated with that form. Now, the last tip I want you to keep in mind is the ability for you to make favorites. So this is the idea of being able to save reports. All the evaluation reports have the ability for you to be able to save them. All of your saved evaluation reports are accessible under the menu option Reports, and you have a section called Favorites. And they're accessible either as department favorites or institutional favorites. Typically, institutional favorites are created by global administrators. So in your medical education office or in the GME, they can create specific reports that are institutionally available. These might be specific demographic reports, or they may be institutional reports on overall performance, or they may be survey results. And these are ways with the saving of reports, as I'll show you, for you to create reports that you access frequently and simply save them as favorites, so you don't have to go back and recreate custom reports for yourself with specific date ranges and filter settings. That way they can become favorites. You can always delete them if you're no longer using them. You can edit them, and you can simply generate them by clicking on the name of the report or clicking run. And we're going to review that once we get into the details of generating reports as well. Now, looking at, now let's get into the basic nuts and bolts of our reports. Our evaluation reports can be divided into 4 major categories. These are going to be department management reports, then there are institutional management reports, then there are personal reports, and there are preceptor reports. So today we're not focusing on personal reporting and preceptor reporting. We have a separate webinar on that topic that's already available for you under my help in terms of generating useful reports. Our main focus is on departmental and institutional management reports for today. So again, our focus right now is on evaluation analysis. So when you access the menu reports, and here I'm showing an example of resident reports, you'll see the reports are divided into 3 columns. The first column are your evaluation results. This is going to give you information about how are residents performing. Now we're going to go into these reports in greater detail, and I will focus on specific key reports and how to use them and how the analytics work. But we're going to first start by getting just a general overview of how these reports are categorized. So if you're looking for results of how are residents performing, what's going on with the rotations for the residents, that's going to be all under your evaluation results. In the middle column, you have evaluation compliance. Evaluation compliance is, are evaluations getting done? And there are different reports here we're going to focus on in terms of looking at overall compliance. Is the work that we need actually getting done? And the last column is what we call evaluation analysis. How do residents compare? How are they performing over time? How are they ranking? What's their scoring profile? This has to do with, are they always giving the same score to the faculty, or the other way? You can run these reports on faculty, for example, and it would be the same idea. So first column are results, middle column is compliance, third column is analysis. And all of these reports are giving you specific data points and specific analysis that we're going to review in greater detail. So now let's focus for a second on the evaluation results section. So the first report I want to bring to your attention is the summary of group resident evaluations, and the second one is summary detailed program evaluations. These are 2 very important reports that I want you to focus on. Yes, there's the individual resident evaluation report. This lets me look at each individual evaluation, but so does the summary one. It allows you to look at things individually and in summary. So why do we have both of them? We have them both because there's a legacy of folks being more comfortable with generating one report. The individual has less filters in it. But today I want you to learn how to use the summary group resident evaluations report to get everything that you need. There's also a summary peer-to-peer evaluation. That report, the same results are available in the second one, summary of group resident evaluations. So why do we have this third one? Sometimes it's easier for people to think about what they're looking for. I want to see results on peer-to-peer evaluations. So they're naturally inclined to go to that report. So in the future, you may find all these reports combined into a single report because they all give you the same results. That's why I want you to focus on just the second one, summary of group resident evaluations. There's a resident comments report. That's if I just want to generate all the comments that were written on residents. Then the other one is the summary detailed program evaluations. This allows me to see the results of evaluations completed by the residents on the program. This would be rotation evaluations, where they're evaluating the rotation or they're evaluating the department. That's the purpose of the summary detailed program evaluations. The second to the last one, resident program comments. I just want to run a report on the comments that residents generated on program evaluations. So when we use the term program evaluations, it's a generic term that refers to a thing. It does not refer to a person. It refers to a specific thing. So here, if it might be a resident evaluating the cafeteria, we would call that a program evaluation. The resident is evaluating the department. That's a program evaluation. The resident is evaluating the rotation. We would call that a program evaluation. And also keep in mind, I'm using residents here as an example. If I go under the attending report section, the same reports are available for attendings. If I go under fellows, the same reports are available for fellows. There's also a section for nurses and a section for PAs, nurse practitioners, and technicians. And this last report here is currently not available to you. This is an overall narrative report that you can run from My Insights. This will be made available to you later in 2024. So then from the first column, we're now going to focus on, sorry, let's just go past that. And here we go into the second column. The second column is evaluation compliance. The main focus here is on ledger of resident evaluations. This is a very, very important report for you to be able to run to see all the evaluations that are associated with the resident. This will show you what has the resident completed, what has been completed on the resident, what is pending, and what never got done and was closed. So that's a very important compliance report for you to make sure that a resident has all the necessary evaluations that they need for the completion of the academic year. Now, in the compliance report, the other important report is the completion status report. This gives you a count of the number of evaluations completed, what's pending, what's overdue, and what has been marked as closed. Closed being evaluations that were not completed within a timely manner, so the system has automatically closed those evaluations. Now, it's important that you keep in mind that all of these various reports that I'm sharing with you, these same reports are available both to you at the department level, and they're also available to you at the institutional level. So here I'm showing various reports that are available to you in the department level format. This is when you access the menu option reports. And that's going to be different than when you access the system as a global administrator or as the GME. When you're accessing these reports as the GME, they're going to be available as institutional reports. So I do want you to distinguish those. And just very quickly to point that out to you, when I'm logged in as an administrator and I access the menu option reports, these are the various reports that are available to you that I'm talking about, and we're going to review these in more detail. On the other hand, if I log into the system as an institutional administrator, under my shortcuts, I have all my institutional compliance reports listed here. So these institutional compliance reports allow you to run data analysis on the entire institution because they allow you to select specific departments. Now, this webinar is being conducted during a transition period where we are transitioning from an older interface to a new interface. So for those of you who are participating in this webinar in a live session, you'll have a switch that you can switch on to be able to switch from the old to the new interface. So today, everything that I'm showing you will be based on the new interface that's accessible to you by simply clicking on the yellow button to switch from the old interface to the new interface and moving forward from there. So focusing on the ledger and the completion status report will be our goal for today. Now, it's important to consider some of the new functionalities that we've introduced into the system. Specifically, in the new interface that we've provided for you on the home screen, you have an entire performance dashboard that's also accessible to you, and that performance dashboard is expanding every week. That means on a weekly basis, we are adding new items to that performance dashboard to track specific points on performance summary, task completion, evaluation completion, et cetera, et cetera. So this is available here when you log into the system and you click on the new interface. You have your dashboard, which comes up by default. You would click on performance, and performance is going to bring up the performance tab. The items that you have listed here will vary depending on your program and what we have already released to you. Some of you may only have a limited list of items. Check back every week for new items that will be released. So what this allows me to do in here is to select a specific individual. So I can select any of the users in my department, and the system will then load a performance dashboard for that specific user. So as an example, one of the things that I would run is under the performance dashboard for evaluation completion, I would expand that and I would look at the specific trainees evaluation completion information. So what I'm showing you there is what comes up live over here. So this shows me very specific information on this resident. Average days to complete an evaluation. Well, it takes 48.2 days for this person to complete their evaluation. The number of days has changed. It has increased by 3.2% year over year. That means last year, this person was completing their evaluations quicker, and now they're taking 3% more time. On average, remember, group refers to trainees in the same training level. On average, residents in this PGY level are taking 52.1 days to complete their evaluations. So the analytics that are available to you in real time for you to look at the performance dashboard and to actually see how people are performing is important. So currently this person has 36 evaluations that are pending. Year over year, that has decreased. On average, 42.6 evaluations are pending for residents in this level. And 2 of the evaluations are what we call long overdue, where they're pending for more than 30 days. And this has also increased over time. And the group average is 1.4. There's also a graphical representation of the number of days it takes to complete evaluation. In yellow, you're seeing the score of, not the score, but the completion days of the user. So we can see how many days it takes over time. And in the group section, it shows the average for residents in the same group. On the right-hand side, you're seeing a histogram showing their performance compared to their peers. So here we can see the performance of the resident in terms of the number of days to complete evaluations is in 50, and it says you and 9 peers completed evaluations within 50 days on average. So it's 50 days over here, Altogether, the user count is 10. So this tells me there are 10 users that are completing evaluations within 50 days. It shows me the group average over here is a line which is somewhere around 63 days. And then it gives me a breakdown of how many days it takes on average for residents to complete their evaluations. So I want you to use the reports in conjunction with what's available in the performance dashboard. So now from compliance section, we go into evaluation analysis. In the evaluation analysis column, we're going to focus only on one report today. There are a number of different reports here. There's early warning reports that I can run just to filter for evaluations that had a performance below a benchmark. The summary resident comments report, the summary resident competency report. I want to generate a report on the residents' competencies overall. How are they doing in each of the core competencies? And the one we want to focus on today is the summary resident performance evaluation report. In this report, we're specifically looking at a very nice chronological review of all the evaluations that have been assigned on the resident, and it shows you in a nice chronological calendar format which evaluations have been completed and those results. So we're going to look at that report. That's a very good way to monitor a resident's performance over the course of a calendar year and an academic year as well. So let's jump right into doing some hands-on on these evaluations. So as we're doing the hands-on, we are focusing on data analysis, looking at the performance metrics and how to track those over time. That's specifically with the graphs that I showed you. And then how does this tie into our ACGME compliance reporting as well? So what I'm doing here is I'm accessing the menu option reports. I'm going to zoom in here so that everybody can see the screen easily. So at the very top, I'm logged in as a program director. I have access to the favorite reports. I have access to personal reports. I happen to also be a preceptor, so I also have access to preceptor reports because using the menu option users to select preceptors, I was assigned as a preceptor for one or more trainees, so I have specific access to preceptor reports. But because I'm also a program director, I have access to evaluation management reports. And these are the three columns we're talking about: evaluation results, evaluation compliance, and evaluation analysis. So the first report I wanted to focus on was the summary of resident evaluations, specifically looking at resident performance across evaluations. So looking at the date range here, remember about putting a date range that's inclusive of the evaluation assignment period. So if I'm a fellowship coordinator that assigns evaluations sometimes once every 6 months, we see that in some of the fellowships where one set of evaluations is assigned from July to December, and another set of evaluations are assigned for January through June. It would be important to change our end date here to be inclusive of the evaluations I'm looking for. So maybe I'm looking for some of those June evaluations that were already completed, and I want to look at those results. Maybe I want to look at evaluation results that go back to last year, so I want to change those end dates. There, here in our rotation options, we do not want to select anything. You do have the option to include deleted rotations, which allows you to pull up rotations that have been deleted, but we're going to exclude those. We're not going to select any rotations. Step 2 is a marvelous step that you can use optionally. 99% of the time, you're going to leave it the default, which is include all completion dates, which is the default. If you select a filter option, it allows you to filter for evaluations that were completed within a specific date range. Let's assume you ran this report with this date range on December 31st. It's now May 2nd, 5 months later. You want to rerun this report, but you want to rerun it to locate only those evaluations that were completed since the last time you ran the report. So since December 31st. So you might put a date range here of saying from 12/31/2023 all the way through today. So this would only show you new results. Otherwise, most of the time, you're going to leave the option of include all completion dates, and you're not going to filter for any specific date range. Step 3. So really, if I'm doing this quickly, I just want my date range, and I'm going to go right down to step 3 to select the residents that I want to review. Now, in all the reports, you have filters here for local users, all users. The default is local users. Those are the users that are listed in this department. If I select all users, the page is going to refresh and it's going to filter and show me all the users from all the departments that are connected to this department. That's the entire list. So we're going to always keep our focus on local users unless we're looking for specific faculty or specific residents that are in other departments where they rotated through with us. The other important thing to keep in mind is you can always generate reports on users that have been archived. Archiving is a separate functionality that allows you to archive users that have already graduated or left your institution. At any time, you can access any of the reports, select the option for Show Archived Users, and it will show you all your archived users, allowing you to generate reports on them. So for now, we're just going to focus on our local users in this department. Now, looking at my list, I'm going to go ahead and select one resident. Now, if I just wanted to generate a report on this one resident, well, great, I can go down and complete the rest of the steps. If I go ahead and select another resident, now I can generate a report on both of them. I'm going to select two because I want you to learn how to best use this report for multiple users. So let's scroll down and look at step 4. Step 4, the system wants you to select the evaluations you want to run the report on. Each of your departments has the ability to share evaluation results with other departments within your institution. Local evaluations are the evaluations that are in your department. When you select all evaluations, the system will show you evaluations from other linked departments. Those departments have chosen to make their evaluation forms available to you. That's from the menu option evaluations. You have the option for shared. If you have the share on for a form, then a linked department is able to access the data on the users they want to run the report on. So we're going to keep this as local evaluations. Now, you can see there are many evaluations, and in many instances, you may or may not know which forms you're looking for. So certainly you can click on all. So I want you to keep in mind, I'm running this report for a 2-year date range. I've selected 2 residents, and I just went ahead and selected all my evaluation forms. And I have sorry about that. I have a whole laundry list of evaluation forms in here that I've selected. So I want to spend some time to focus on steps 5, 6, and 7 in terms of your filtering capabilities, because this is a very powerful report, and I want you to really appreciate what these filters are meant for. Keeping in mind that I have selected 2 residents for 2 years, and I've selected all the evaluations. So I've intentionally selected something that could be a very complicated, very convoluted, very comprehensive report. Now I can generate this report in summary format. Summary format means if John Adams had 10 evaluations for, let's say it was called evaluation form 1, 10 of those were completed, then in the summary format, it's going to list a summary of those 10 together. So instead of generating a detailed report, which is going to show each evaluation score one by one, in the summary format, it's going to generate a summary of those 10. The next option is compare users or individual results. Because I've selected 2 users, the results will compare those users side by side. So this is very useful if I'm looking at comparing 2 users to one another to see how are they performing compared to one another. If I select individual results, then it's going to provide me the results for John Adams, and then it will separately provide me with the results for Melinda Abalone. So that's the main difference for the idea of comparing results versus side by side, not side by side, but individual results. The next option is competency and question. As you know, all the questions in your evaluations are sorted by competency. So by default, the system shows you a competency score and an individual score for each question. Sometimes you might want to just look at a summary competency only, and you want to include the details of each question. Then there's the option to include scores versus to include scores and a frequency distribution. So if I'm running this in a summary format, I can have a frequency distribution, and that option is also available in a detailed format. But notice when I do a detailed format, I lose the option for comparing the users because you're looking at a detailed format, you can't compare users. So frequency distribution will tell you how many 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s were listed in the system, and that's the main idea of doing a comparison like that. Then group calculation. Remember that I told you that a group calculation gives me an average score for the selected PGY level in this case. Well, the default is all users evaluated. That means it's going to look at, let's say if this is a PGY2, all the PGY2s that were evaluated versus selected users evaluated. In other words, because I've selected Melinda and John, if I'm looking at the results of Melinda and John, it's going to only compare them as a group to each other. It's not going to compare across the board with anybody else. So the main idea here is if you're running a report and you want to see the group average for only those specific users that you selected, then you'll choose the option for selected users evaluated. So this becomes important if you are comparing 2 users to one another and you're wondering how they are performing side by side. In that case, you're going to select the option for selected users evaluated. If you're only looking for the performance of those 2 particular users. Evaluation type. Do I want all the results, or do I only want to focus on assigned results? So remember, in the system, it's possible to generate voluntary evaluations. A voluntary evaluation is an ad hoc evaluation. That means I chose to go in and do an evaluation. Sometimes programs want to generate an evaluation report that's only focusing on the things that were completed based on assigned evaluations. They want to exclude those that were done voluntarily, which is absolutely fine, and that's what this filter will do for you. Results displayed. Do I want to look at all results, Or do I want to look at actual evaluation results only? I don't want the averages to be distributed, shown. Those averages are on average how people are performing. It excludes those averages. Another option you have is to include percentages. One of the things we do in order to normalize evaluations is we provide percentages. So a score of 3 out of 5, for example, would be 60%. A score of 3 out of 4, on the other hand, would be 72%. So this allows you to compare scores to one another based on percentages. So if you have different evaluation forms that have different scales associated with them, you could choose to include percentages in order to complete them. The minimum count per user allows you to generate a report only when there is at least a certain number of evaluations completed. So if I select 5 and Melinda and John only have 1 evaluation completed, then it will not show any results. So we just leave it on the default of all. So I know I'm going through a lot of details on this one evaluation, but this one report is so powerful that you really want to take full advantage of it and understand what these filters represent. Now in step 6, you're able to select for a specific evaluator. Sometimes this is necessary if you're looking at how one evaluator has evaluated multiple residents. So it allows you in step 3 to select multiple residents. And then here in step 6, you could optionally select that one evaluator to see how they rated all those people that were evaluated. And in step 7, I have all my display options. When I'm generating a report, what do I want to include? What do I want to exclude? So by default, all the evaluation parameters, such as evaluator name, unless it's anonymous, evaluating name, evaluation name, period, rotation, completion date, all of that is included. So you have the ability to customize that. Do I want to include evaluation comments or do I want to exclude them? If you're including them, you also have the option of selecting what types of comments you want to include or exclude. So imagine if you generate a report like this a couple times a year where you're looking at all the evaluations for maybe all your PGY1s or all your PGY2s. Imagine what you're able to do where you can say here under step 3, I want to generate a report on all my PGY2s. So you select the option for PGY2, you click add, the system will filter for all the PGY2s and list them for you. Then I select all my evaluations. Maybe I want to compare users, summary format, and I'm going to go down here, leave all these evaluation options, and then I can do a save setting. So this could be my 2022, 2024 PGY2 evaluations. And I click save. Now what the system will do, it will save that evaluation under my frequently available reports, which is my favorites. If I expand that, I have my 2022, 2024 PGY2 evaluations available. Now I want to run it, I can simply click on it and the system will run. So what did we do here? We asked the system to generate a report for 2 years on all my PGY2s, on all my evaluations, and I asked the system to compare the results. As you can see, the report came up in a fairly reasonable amount of time. As I scroll through, remember the system is only going to compare users that have data to be compared. When I'm talking about comparing evaluation results, I'm talking about results like this, where the performance of John Adams is being compared to the performance of Madeline Albright. So I can see John got a 3 on this particular question, Madeline got a 4. The group average, notice the N value is 3. That means there were 3 evaluations completed. The group average is 3.33. And the total average is 3.33 based on 6 completed evaluations. So here, when I'm looking at this particular evaluation, whatever this particular evaluation is, I'm only seeing the score for Madeline Albright, Madeline Abalone, because only Dr. Abalone has this evaluation completed on them. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to just scroll through this a little bit just to come up to another one here. Here I can see that the cardiology evaluation of resident was completed on John Adams and Dorothy Fields. So again, I can see my group average and my total average. I see the scores they received. So it gives me a very nice side-by-side comparison. These are our EPA-based evaluations. So I can see the EPA here, and under it, I see the specific curricular milestone listed. So it's a breakdown of the details. There's a section break at the end of every evaluation. It also shows me the specific scale that was used on that particular evaluation. So as I scroll down here, at the end of this particular evaluation, I can also see the comments that were written on John Adams and the comments written on Dorothy Fields. I can see if there were any optional confidential comments. Confidential comments are only available to the GME, the medical education office, and those with program director access level. If your access is an administrator or anything other than a program director, and you're not part of the GME or the medical education office, you will not be able to see confidential comments. Those are only accessible to those specific privileges. So confidential comments, and I have a statistical summary at the bottom. It tells me there were 2 evaluations in total completed here, standard deviation of 0.6. The median score was 4, the mean is 3.37, a variance of 0.36. The highest score was a 4 and the lowest score was a 2, and this was the scale that was being used on the evaluation. So this process will continue all the way to the very end, where you're able to see each individual evaluation completed on the user. So this is the entire benefit of generating a summary group resident evaluation. So if I were in a situation where I just wanted to look at specific evaluation on a user, I would still do the same thing. Put in the date range, select the individual, select one or more evaluations that I want. I want it in detailed format. I want each individual evaluation one by one. I want to include all the comments. Because of my access level, I have access to confidential comments. If you don't see this, that means you do not have access to confidential comments. And then I'm able to go in and generate that report. Now, in this case, because I selected detail and over a 2-year period, it now has to provide me with the results of each individual evaluation form that was completed on John Adams. So in this instance, I see a different set of data. What I see in this case is I see this evaluation form was completed. It was completed on this date. It was completed for this rotation period. I can see the evaluator was Lyndon Johnson. The rotation was geriatrics. This is an EPA-based evaluation. I see that John Adams got a score of 3. 3 represents competent, developing skills, knowledge, and attitude. On average, this attending gives a score of 3. On average, residents in this PGY level get a score of 3.5, and on average, all the residents get an average score of 3.5 for this as well. So not only do I see the residents' performance, but I also see the attending average, the group, and the total. This is that option in our filters in step 5, where we can exclude averages. We just want the evaluation result without the averages. That would be an option. So obviously I would then scroll down. I would see the comment section at the bottom of this evaluation. I can see the evaluation comments. I can see program director comments. And if there were any optional comments provided, that would be listed here as well. So the next report that we want to focus on specifically has to do with summary group detailed evaluations. Now that you understand these details, I can go through them a bit quicker. Here in this report, I can actually choose to include rotations only if I want to see and compare them. Because evaluations that are done on the program are normally anonymous, notice I don't select specific levels. I can choose, I don't select users, I can choose a specific level. I want to know how a specific PGY level has rated a rotation. Again, I have the option of selecting all evaluations or selecting a specific evaluation. Then I have the option of running this report in a detailed format, or I can run this in a summary format. Same idea as the previous reports. Do I want to look at them side by as a summary and compare the results, or do I want to look at a summary of each rotation? So this becomes very useful if you're trying to compare different rotations to one another. It becomes very, very, very useful. So if you're using one form, and on the one form you have a multitude of different rotations that are being evaluated with that same form, it becomes very useful to be able to compare results to one another. We covered all these other options about averages, score frequency, percentages, evaluation types, and the evaluation sources. Do we want to focus just on the people who did this from my department, or do I want to focus on all of them altogether? And then do I want to include comments or exclude comments? You have those same filters as well. So if I run that specific report, what I did in this case is I selected all my rotations, and then I selected the option for compare results, just to show you how the system will display each individual rotation, and it will allow me to compare the results. So obviously you can see that these rotations don't have any scores except for the GYN oncology and the consult service. So if I go back, and instead of selecting all the rotations, I select my consult service, and I select my GYN oncology only, same forms, same compare evaluation results. In this case, I'm going to get just results for the two that actually have data. So at first I ran the report with all the rotations, then I came back and I did a summary comparison. So it allows me to see each rotation side by side and compare them to one another. Moving through to the evaluation compliance section, we're going to look at the Ledger of Evaluations report. Same idea with our date range. I'll leave it for the current academic year. I'll select one specific user. I want to look at all evaluations that were assigned, not just the ones local in my department. You can include or exclude conference evaluations. Maybe I just want to see evaluations completed on the user, so you can filter for those. We'll run this report in the default format. This report is very helpful for you to get the big picture of seeing what are all the evaluations completed by the resident. Even though these evaluations are anonymous, you can still see whether the resident has completed the specific evaluations that were assigned to them. Evaluations completed on the resident. It shows you that a specific evaluation was completed. In this case, it was assigned to Eric Alpers, but I went ahead and did that by proxy. It was for the October rotation in GYN oncology. It was completed on April 18th. It's pending the program director's review. The status, it has not been reviewed by the resident yet. versus this evaluation was reviewed by the resident on April 22nd, 2024, but they did not sign off on it yet. And there are two questions on the evaluation. If I scroll to the very bottom, it gives me a key of evaluator, evaluatee review results. The first column is telling you whether the attending said they verbally discussed the evaluation with the resident. The second column tells you if the resident also confirms that they verbally discussed it. So in this case, both the attending and the resident agree that this was discussed, and it would show you the date that it was reviewed. Then here I see all the evaluations that were closed. So in this department, we have an automatic 30-day closure. So after 30 days, evaluations that aren't completed are closed. So I can have a clear picture of evaluation closures. I want you to keep this in mind when we go to generate an overdue evaluations report for you to see how that ties in. And here I can see everything that's pending. I'm going to pull this report aside for a second, and we're going to go back into our reports that we were running a minute ago. And we're going to run a completion status report. So we ran a ledger report on John Adams. Now we're going to run a completion status report. Notice I'm not changing the end date. I can, if I want to say I want to look all the way till the end of the academic year, but it would not be appropriate for this report right now. I can then select all my evaluators, but I'm going to actually go back to my reports. I want to generate this report not on residents, but I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to generate this on attendings. So I'm going to do a completion status report for the current academic year on all my attendings, on all the evaluations that are assigned in my department. I'm going to look at selected total pending, anything that's pending between 5% to 100% pending. I'm going to look at a detailed department data. That's going to show me for each user versus summary is overall for the department. I'm going to include those that have no assignments, or I can exclude them. I don't want to see the names of people that don't have any evaluation assignments. Why do I want to create a big report for myself? So I'm only going to focus on users that have assignments. I'm going to include counts and percentages. I'm going to include an aging detail, and I'm going to sort this by last name. Again, imagine what a great report this is for you to set this up for the whole academic year and just simply save it. And that way, anytime you need a completion report, you just one click and you have the evaluation report. Even though this report loads up very quick, you can export it to Excel, you can print it. Let's review it really quickly. Here for the department, we can see a total of 316 evaluations have been assigned. 43 of them were completed within 15 days. One was completed 16 to 30 days, and this is what our aging represents. So it shows you how quickly evaluations are getting completed. 10 of those evaluations were voluntarily completed. That means they were done ad hoc. You didn't assign them as the administrator. People selected them and assigned them to themselves. In total, when you take everything that was assigned and completed, you have 62 completed evaluations, or 19.62%. Then here we have a breakdown of overdue evaluations. We can see the number of overdue evaluations here. In total, we have 14 overdue evaluations. And in total, 240 of those evaluations, 76% of my evaluations are closed. And this is what I wanted to tie to back to the ledger of evaluations report. When you look at your closed evaluations, it's very important for you to run a completion status report on your faculty in order to identify faculty that have 100% of their evaluations closed, 92% closed, 88% closed. This allows you to identify faculty that are not completing evaluations in a timely manner. So this gives you a breakdown. It also shows you a breakdown by rotation. So at the top, you have a breakdown by user, At the bottom, you have a breakdown by rotation, so it'll show you for every rotation by faculty your individual breakdown. So it's a very, very useful report with an overall statistical summary at the very bottom. The last evaluation related report that I want to look at with you is the summary performance evaluation report. So under the summary resident performance evaluation report, I'm going to focus on that same resident. Notice there's no date range in this report. Here, I select the resident, I select the evaluation forms, I can include or exclude comments, I'm going to include them. And do I want to run this report for all years, or do I want to run this for a specific academic year? I'll run this for the 23-24 academic year, just for the sake of bringing up the report and reviewing it in general detail with you. So I'm going to first zoom out on this just so that you could see how wide this report is. And the reason this report is so wide to the right is because I selected different evaluation forms that have different types of results on it. Some of these evaluation reports, like the general pediatrics inpatient rotation evaluation, have competencies such as chart audits and clinical skills on it. So what this report does is it shows you by calendar month within the academic year for each rotation, the evaluator, the evaluation, and the score the resident received by competency. So it gives you a very big picture by rotation of how the resident is performing and overall how they're performing for that particular academic year, with all the relevant comments listed underneath as well. So this summarizes our evaluation results and how to generate those reports. This is probably the most comprehensive area where you're generating reports that you should be familiar with. The next area we want to focus on are EPAs and milestones. So if you go under the menu option evaluations, and I'll just bring that up because here I'm only showing you a snippet of it, but specifically under the menu option evaluations, and let me bring up a different screen here. Under the menu option evaluations, on the right-hand side under curricular and milestone management, at the bottom we have our curricular and milestone reports. So I'm focusing on these 4 reports that are available down here. In the screenshot, I'm only showing you the bottom of the page. So these reports in general, the first one is the curricular milestone report. This is in order to generate EPA performance for individuals or a group by year and overall. It gives you a graph showing you a performance of the users across time. This is a very useful report for our programs that are using EPAs, especially starting 2024 for the general surgery programs that have specific EPAs that are doing. I'm going to go through these individually just so that you can see them as I go through. It allows me to select a user. I can then come down and select the competencies that are associated with those EPAs. So if we're looking at the general surgery EPAs, they're all categorized under surgical skills. So when I select surgical skills, the system will show me all the EPAs that are available under surgical skills. I can select all of them. Then I can look at all performance levels or those that are just marginal for a given academic year or for all years. I have a filter here at the top, and I can look at the granularity by month or over year, and also look at individual or summary group performance. So I'm going to generate that report, and what this report does is it shows me the performance of that resident on that particular EPA on abdominal wall hernia evaluation. So that's the entrustment. And I've chosen to include the curricular milestones. So it's showing me the individual curricular milestones and how they performed over time. So it shows you by calendar month here And I'm really zoomed in on this. So if I zoom back down to normal, you can see by calendar month, I can see the performance of the user across time. The next report here is the milestone narrative report. This is what we run in order to look at individual milestone performance or to do comparison of users across milestones. Bringing that report up again, at the very bottom, we have the milestone narrative report. We've looked at this report in various webinars that focus on the milestones. Again, I'm going to select that same resident. I can select multiple residents if I want to. If I want to compare their results to one another, then do I want to focus on this academic year or all years? Do I want to look at all periods or just one particular period? Do I want to look at each individual, or do I want to summarize those residents all together? And then we have a number of other filters here that we can include as well. So once I go into a summary format though, notice what I have here is much fewer options. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as summary, and I'm going to generate that report only to demonstrate the idea of generating a summary report. In this case, Madeline Albright does not have any performance here, but it would show the performance of John Adams and Madeline Albright side by side with each other across all the specific subcompetencies. So that's your milestone narrative report. The next one is ledger of assessments. This report allows me to look at all the completed and pending milestone assessments. It also allows me to see how much time was spent completing each assessment. So if I do a ledger of assessments report, let's say on all of my residents, I click add all, and I say for period 1, I want you to include all completed assessments and all pending assessments. I click generate report. It shows me that only one assessment was completed on John Adams for period 1. It was completed on April 18th by Cindy Crawford. 4 minutes was spent completing it. It was reviewed and signed by the resident. The CCC said, yes, we provided the confirmation for the resident. The resident said, yes, I received a confirmation to review my milestones. This is a very important part of your ACGME compliance, to be able to document that both the resident had an opportunity to review their evaluations and they had an opportunity for a semi-annual review with the program director. That's all included on here. And if you have done a self-assessment, that would be listed here as well. This shows that all the following items are still pending review. Although on March 11th, David Malamed did go in and review Melinda Aballone's milestones, he did not finish it. So that's still open for the program director to review. So ledger of assessments is a great compliance related report for you to see what performance looks like and what still needs to be assessed. And the last report allows you to generate a detailed list of all the performance improvement plans for users that have performance improvement plans triggered on them. So if you don't have any performance improvement plans, you won't see any names. So this tells me for the 23-24 academic year, these users have performance improvement plans, so I can run that report to see the status of those individual performance improvement plans. So it's very simple, very straightforward. Now, going back to our performance dashboard, under the performance tab, you do have a section for competencies and milestones. This is going to show you over each academic year how the user's competency performance is over time. And if you click on the right-hand side under entrustable professional activities, you will see performance across the EPAs. So this is a terrific dashboard for those of you that are utilizing EPAs in order to see how your trainees are doing across each EPAs. For general surgery, those EPAs are put into groups. So each one of the surgical EPAs, there's 18 of them all together, they are put into groups where they have 3 components. They have a pre-surgical, a surgical, and a post-surgical component. So they're categorized into groups, so you can see how they're doing for each group and how they're doing individually for each item. So I've done the hands-on of those reports. So I'm going to move on from the hands-on section, and we're going to jump into clinical hour reports. So in clinical hour reports, there are many different reports. I've somewhat separated them. This is what the menu looks like. So what I've done here is I've just separated them to focus on the areas that I think are most pertinent to you. And I'm going to focus on those with you. So that the record of rotations is a very good report for you to generate. I just want to see a record of all the rotations that a resident has completed. So let's look at these reports as I go through them, because there's a lot of them, and I want to focus only on the ones that I think are most important to you. So under the clinical hours menu, I'm looking at record of rotations. I want to know all the rotations for a specific trainee. So under record of rotations, I can select the trainees that I need. Excuse me. So under record of rotations, I can select the specific trainees that I want to run a report on and generate that report in detailed and summary format. I'm just getting a little bit of a hiccup on accessing that specific page, so I'll come back to it. Oh, there we go. So I can select one or more users. So I'll select a few different users here. I can select the first rotation after period. That's if I only want to know rotations after a particular period. The summary format, the detailed format, or the detailed fiscal format. The summary format is the most common format that you're going to generate, which is going to show you results of each individual user and what their specific rotations are. So this shows me for each individual resident what their rotations are, and it tells me, well, the following residents aren't on the schedule. Okay, now if I generate that same report, I'm going to generate it in a detailed format, and I'm going to include clinics and calls. So if you happen to have clinics and calls set up, it will list all the clinics and calls that are available for the specific users that you've selected. In this case, there are no clinics and calls, and then we'll go back and we're going to do that same record of rotations. And for some reason, I'm not sure why I'm getting a little bit of a hang up on that report coming up. I'm going to generate it in the fiscal format as soon as that comes up and show you the details of that as well. I don't want to hold up our webinar. I see that report is taking some time to load, so I'm going to keep moving, and I'll bring it back up in a second. The next report here, which is record of rotators, is specifically to focus on those users that are listed as rotators in your department and are not necessarily part of your department. This report is typically used, and I'm not going to run this report because it's not one of the critical reports that I want you to focus on. This report is primarily used for medical students that are rotating because it allows you to generate demographics along with the rotation history. The next report here is the clinical hours compliance report. That definitely represents one of the key reports we want to look at, along with the clinical hour summary compliance and the detailed clinical hours report. Then here at the bottom, you have some general detailed reports such as your daily summary, weekly summary, and then at the bottom we have a clinical hour completion report and a schedule discrepancy report that are important for us to review as well. So I'm going to bring this back up. This was the report I was just trying to generate. We're going to select John Adams. We're going to select detailed fiscal format. So in the detailed fiscal format, you get not only the specific rotation details, but you get a table listing all the fiscal information that's used for fiscal processing. This is what we would refer to as your IRIS reporting or IRIS exporting. So this is giving you a clear picture that, hey, everything that you need in order to generate a fiscal report on this user is actually done. If anything was missing, it would be highlighted in red, and the system would identify the specific missing elements for you. The other report on this particular list is that I want you to focus on is the clinical hour compliance report. So in the compliance report, this is lets you know by rotation. So if I look at each individual rotation, I'll select last month. How is the resident or the residents that I'm selecting, what is their compliance with clinical hours? This format is identical to the format that you receive as a non-compliance administrator for duty hours. So it tells you for that April month, the name of the rotation, and it shows you that the ACGME clinical hour rules and where they are compliant and where they're not compliant. It tells you the specific details because they had less than 14 hours off between 10:25 a.m. and 3:44 p.m. when they came back for the rotation. It shows that no explanation was provided by the user, and this is pending to be reviewed by the administrator. Because I'm an administrator, I can click here to review and write my comments as well. I can also click on this in order to get details of the specific violation, and it will show me, well, the violation occurred here because they worked from 7 p.m. till 10:30 the next morning, and then they came back at 3:44, and that created a rest violation. So in contrast to the clinical hour compliance report, then here you have the summary clinical hours compliance report. So it's clinical hours summary compliance. The major difference is with the compliance report, you're looking at things block by block. In the summary compliance, I can put in a date range. I want to look at all compliance for all my PGY levels. I can choose to look at it in summary for the department for each rotation, or I can look at it at detailed format for each rotation and all my trainees. These are reports that your GME are able to run as well to look at the entire institution. We're going to leave the option for global department rules. We'll include a graph and we'll generate that report. Again, notice that I can save that report, so I can set it up for the entire academic year, and I can see whether how the results are coming along. So I'm zoomed in, so I'm going to zoom out for a second just so that you can see what the format looks like in a zoom out form. So there's a graph here at the top showing the number of different violations that have occurred. As I hover over it, it gives me the date range of those violations. I have a table here showing each rotation and the number of violations listed in here. And then I have a breakdown by rotation, by trainee, by dates, and I have my violations listed here. Now, the numerical values in here, let's review them very quickly. There's a 2, in parentheses, there is a 0/0. And you have a breakdown here that tells you what that 0/0 represents, but I'm gonna share it with you. So this means that this resident had 2 minimum time off violations during the August 2023 rotation. The resident did not provide an explanation. That's your first 0. The second 0 shows that the administrator did not provide an explanation either. So for your ACGME compliance, it's very important that all of you have a clinical hour non-compliant administrator that's set up. You set that up from the clinical hours menu. If you go under settings, you have all of your various settings, and you want to set up your non-compliant admin emails. This is where you specify who are the administrators that are monitoring duty hour non-compliance, what type of notifications they receive, and they will receive daily notifications of non-compliance, so you make sure that you're compliant with the ACGME requirements to monitor those duty hours. The other report that's important for us to review is this, the one here at the bottom, which is clinical hour completion. Clinical hour completion allows you to see, have they completed their duty hours in a timely manner? Now, one of the things that we're recommending, so I'm going to leave the date range for the whole academic year, and I'm going to run this in a detailed format, and I'm going to click OK. An important topic for you to keep in mind with this is if your programs have not already implemented MyQuickPass for a hands-free duty hour tracking, then I encourage you to reach out to our sales office to ask about implementing MyQuickPass. MyQuickPass allows you to set up geofences around your hospital and other clinical locations, and as long as the residents have the MyEvaluations mobile app installed on their phone, then anytime they come into a clinical site, it'll mark when they've entered, and when they leave, it'll mark when they've left. So it completely automates your duty hour tracking, and it changes your compliance from whatever it is now to near 100%. I say near 100% in case there are any sites that you're not tracking. But what this shows you, for example, if we're looking at Dr. John Adams, it shows that there were 42 shifts that they have signed into. There were 163 shifts altogether. So that shows me that he has reviewed approximately 30% of his duty hours that have been reviewed and submitted. The last shift that he reviewed was for April 30th. The last time that he accessed the system was on April 29th. So this is the completion report. Again, this is a report that's available to the GME to look at overall duty hour completion institutionally as well. And the very last report that we want to look at will be the one listed at the bottom, which is the clinical hour to schedule discrepancy report. This report is important if your program allows residents to select specific date ranges, and you want to make sure that the data that they have submitted corresponds to the rotation they were scheduled for. So this is important in the instance where you want to make sure that the data you're submitting to Medicare for your IRIS report is accurate. So this is part of your auditing process to make sure that the data is matching up. So this tells me that Melinda Abalone was scheduled for inpatient on July 4th. However, they reported hem-onc on July 4th. So there is a one-day discrepancy. Why does that matter? Well, your Medicare audit reports, number one, you get reimbursed based on specific rotations and the direct medical education and the indirect medical education values associated with each rotation. So certain rotations have a different value associated with them compared to others. In addition, when Medicare does an audit on your rotations, if they find that there's a discrepancy between the rotation you've reported and the rotation that was actually on the schedule, there can be a problem there. So we want to, in this instance, look to see, was Melinda Abalone actually on hem-onc? in which case I have to fix the schedule. Or actually, was Melinda Abalone on inpatient floors and they changed the rotation name to HEMONC, in which case I need to have Melinda Abalone or myself as the administrator go in and correct their duty hour submission page. So that's the major importance there in our duty hour tracking. So in total, these were the main reports that I wanted to focus on with you. In addition, under the performance section, you have a clinical hour section that's going to give you a breakdown of all their clinical hours they've reviewed, what percentage have been verified, what's the last shift they've reported, the last access date, and it'll give you a breakdown of their violations over time as well. And there'll be a table of their violations and what percentage of their activities have violations associated with them. And that's available under your performance dashboard as well. So we've done the hands-on as we've gone through, so we're going to jump right into our conference reports. There are 5 conference reports. We're focusing on 2 of them, mainly the monthly clinic conference and the summary clinic conference. That's accessible under the clinical hours menu. In the middle section, you have the clinical hours. On the far right, you have the conference tracking section. The first report there is our monthly clinic conference schedule. This is for me to generate a schedule report of all of the conferences. So I can simply select monthly clinic conference. Notice by default, the current month is selected. I can change it. I can look at a date range. By default, all the conferences are already selected. So, and it's going to be in a calendar format. All I need to do is to click OK, and I have a calendar that I can print out. I can click on these specific items. It will bring up the details of each individual conference. If there happens to be a handout associated with it, that would be available for me to review as well. The next report here is a detailed and then followed by a summary report of conference attendance. The preferred report I recommend for you to focus on is the summary conference attendance table. It gives you the most pertinent information in terms of overall conference attendance. The detail gives you a breakdown of each individual conference. By selecting a date range, I can then select a specific user or multiple users. Notice the conferences are selected by default. I can change them if I want to. I want to look at their attendance record versus things that they have presented. I'm going to look at this in summary. I don't want the detail for each individual conference, and I'm going to include my category and topic summaries, which are 2 separate tables that are generated on the report. So because this is in summary format, it tells me that in this case, John Adams has attended 7.3% of their conferences. 3 out of 41 conferences were attended. None were late. 1 was partially present. Partially present does not count as present. Partially present is partially present. They may have been there for just 10 minutes. That's not the same as being present. And the total hours that they participated with, then it also breaks it down for you by required conferences and those conferences that you have marked as optional attendance. And overall, he has 37 absences. The 2 additional tables that I've included on here are great for you to look at your program's overall educational compliance. What I'm referring to is look at your in-training exam performance and look at the areas of weakness you have on an in-training exam. Then look here at your conferences that are divided here specifically by categories, and you can see different categories and different topics that were covered. This is why it's important when you're scheduling your conferences, you categorize them and you put a topic in, 1 or more topics. So when you come back, you can see for each conference, how many people did we assign, how many people actually showed up. So if you have a problem, let's say in cardiology, and you see, well, we're not having any cardiology conferences, now you can schedule the cardiology conferences. The second table simply does a breakdown by category instead of here looking at it by topic. So these are the two most important reports in terms of conference compliance I want to focus on. The other two reports here are simply a detailed and a summary conference evaluation report. This is for me to generate a report on my evaluations that were done on the conferences. Remember that when you're scheduling your conferences, you can actually have evaluations where the trainees and the attendees who go to the conference can complete the conference evaluation on their mobile device. This allows you to run a report on those conferences to see how they rated the conferences. So the two reports that I focused on are the monthly conference schedule and the summary clinic conference tracking report. In addition, under the performance dashboard, you do have access to conference attendance, which is going to give you a breakdown of the conferences they attended compared to the group, and it will show you performance over time as well. I apologize, this one has an overlap here. I wanted to talk about scholarly activities very quickly, where you're able to generate scholarly activity reports as well. Scholarly activity reports can be generated from the menu option, My Portfolio. If you're looking at the overall scholarly activities of your trainees, and again, I apologize, I have an overlap in my text here, but if you access My Portfolio and you go under the Scholarly Activities tab, by either opening the Publications or Personal Presentations tab, you can generate department reports. And in the department reports, you have the filters that I'm reviewing here. I'll come back to review this report in regards to ACGME compliance and how we're able to generate our ACGME compliance from this report as well. So you select the detailed format, you select the users that you want to look at their scholarly activities, and then you can select the specific subject matters. And in this case, we just select all subjects. The great part of this report, it gives you a nice tabular listing of all of the specific data that they've submitted in terms of their scholarly activities. You can also use the personal presentation section to look at 3 sets of scholarly activities. Specifically, we can look at publications and research projects, which will break down what's pending and what's been completed. It'll show you their performance over time. You can look at their personal presentations, how many they've had by type and topic, and you can look at quality improvement projects that have been submitted within the system, how many have been submitted, how many have been reviewed, and how many have been implemented. So this is available to you in real time. So in regards to the scholarly activities, I want to also tie this into your ACGME compliance through the ACGME website. In the ADS modules, you can actually export your scholarly activities and you can export your case logs, and both of those can be imported into the system. Under the menu option evaluations, you have a section for program management reports that allow you to do scholarly activity importing and case log importing. So in case you've reported data into ADS and you want to import it into MyEvaluations, you're able to do that directly by using these scholarly activity and case log importing. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you can generate your scholarly activity reports by department reports from My Portfolio, and I reviewed this section with you. Now, the only difference here is instead of selecting the option for detailed, I'm selecting the option for ACGME format in step 2. And I still select all my users. I still select all the options here, and I run that report. The really great thing about this report, it's identical to your ACGME format, so I can very quickly generate an ACGME scholarly activity compliance report by selecting the ACGME format. I select all my users, I click OK, and I'm going to get an ACGME report format that will include all my details that I need. Notice there's a records per page here. I can change this if I want to look at more data. Otherwise, it's an actual proactive tabular report here. And notice each one of these tables will individually have an export to Excel option, so you're able to export them as well. So I've gone through this detail with you, and I've shown the hands-on. So I want to jump into procedures and patient logs with you now. So specifically looking at procedure reports, that's going to be accessible from the menu option procedures. We're going to focus on the summary procedure report and the procedure competency report. Yes, there are a number of other reports here that are available to you from the menu option procedures and under the procedure and patient log section. For procedure reports, there's the individual procedure report where I want to look at each individual procedure that was submitted. The one that I'm going to recommend for you to use is the summary procedure report that gives you a table of all the procedures completed by a user. The procedure ability report will have different nomenclature associated with it. The nomenclature of that report will be determined by your department's setup. That means based on how you are tracking your procedures in your department. Under the menu option procedures, if you go to procedure and error tracking setup, so under procedures, we go procedure error tracking setup, manage supervision requirements. There is a procedure competency language. There are three options. The default is certified, not certified. Some institutions don't like to use that terminology because it overlaps with terminology used with faculty. So you have the option for able to perform and competent. So depending on which option you've selected in your program, the name of this report will change. If you've done able to perform, it'll be procedure ability report. If you've selected competent, then it will be procedure competency report. If you've selected certified, it'll be procedure certification report. So the name on that will vary. So the two reports of summary and procedure ability report are the two main reports that I like to focus on. The other one is the pending authorizations report. This report is going to tell you what procedures have been submitted and are waiting for the supervisor to sign off on it. That's also a very useful report. Now that procedure abilities report is also directly available under the shortcuts menu as verify procedure certification. It's also available on the mobile device. This allows anybody who has access into MyEvaluations. You're also able to create generic access with a hyperlink that anybody within your institution can centrally click on the link to verify someone's qualifications. And this is part of your JCO requirement and your ACGME requirement for levels of supervision. So all of this is tracked through the verify procedure certification or verify procedure ability report, and it's going to provide you with all that specific detail. Under the performance dashboard, you also have a procedure section that will show you the number of what they've completed for certification and for graduation, and it will break down each procedure for you in terms of the number they've completed compared to their peers as well. The patient log report we're going to review very briefly. There's the main focus of the patient log report will be to look at patient log by department. So this is giving you a breakdown of what types of patients were seen by PGY level. Patient log detailed report, if I want to look at individual logs for a given user. If I want to review summary patient logs. And patient log by diagnosis classification will be the most popular one, especially for programs such as family medicine, which there are standards that are changing, but if you're looking at to see whether the resident has met the requirements for the number of different patients they need to see. That would be your patient log by diagnosis classification. The patient diagnosis department report, that shows the different diagnosis classifications for your department as a whole. So the previous one shows you by resident, this is for the department, and patient log by category is if I want to see what categories and diagnosis classifications and encounter types were seen within my department. So these are all very useful reports that you can generate. The patient log summary report is going to give you by PGY level, as I mentioned. The patient log by diagnosis classification is going to show each class, how many OB patients, how many pediatric patients were seen. So for tracking specific case logs on OB, this becomes very important for family medicine. And then we have patient log by diagnosis classification, also an important report. And then that also under the performance dashboard, you have access to patient log performance details. That's very similar to the procedure log section. Here you also have a filter for all years and selected years. One of the things that we will be doing to this section in order to help you answer some of the family medicine related questions, we also plan on including the total number of hours from clinical encounters. So patient care outpatient details in terms of hours will be listed here as well in the very near future. So you can see not only a count of the number of patient logs they've done, but also a breakdown of the number of hours that they've spent in outpatient clinic settings. We've gone over those hands-on. So as I'm moving through to the demographics report, this is a very important section for you to be able to generate specific details on demographics, the data you've collected on individual users that you can generate as export files into Excel or export files for a mail merge into Microsoft Word. Examples of this would be to create custom reports for ACLS, BLS certification and things like that. This is all accessible to you from the menu option users, and you have a detailed demographic report where you can look at specific data points on each individual users. Excuse me one second. Summary department reports. This is where you can create custom reports using data sets. Instead of an individual data point, you can select it from sets of data. And the last option is a data merge document, which allows you to actually create merge documents, mail merge them into Microsoft Word. So from the data you have in MyEvaluations, you can do a merge document and create custom letters that, there as well. This, under the users menu, is the same area where you can access your onboarding module. And this is also where you can generate certificates of completion. So if you want to generate, for example, diplomas for graduating, this is where you can actually create certificates with custom graphics, export it into PDF, send it to the printer for printing professional PDF certificates of graduation. You can do that directly to the certificate of completion section. So let's do a quick hands-on on this. So from the menu option users, we have our detailed demographics report. And I know I have two different profiles here. I want to make sure, I want to look at this from an admin perspective with you. So there's a couple of different perspectives. So we're going to look at this from a GME perspective. Under the menu option users, we're going to go to the detailed demographics report. And here we're going to look at this from a GME perspective. The nice thing here is I can select departments that I want to pull demographics from. So oops, sorry about that. So for example, I'll select one department, and then what types of users. I can select specific users. I can say I want to focus on these residents, for example. And then at the bottom, I want to generate data based on a specific academic year and what type of layout do I want? Okay, what is this? Well, there are specific institutional templates that you're in the GME office. You can create these institutional templates and make them available for everyone within your institution. Then we have system templates. These could be templates that we've created for you and you're able to utilize them. And then custom templates are templates that you've created within your local department. That means you as an administrator have created those templates. You can create a template by clicking Manage Layouts. If your access, in this case, is an institutional administrator, you're able to go to specific templates and you can edit them. This is where you have the option to mark things as institutional templates. If you mark something as a medical template, then the system will apply privileged HIPAA compliance rules to that template that will allow only users that have access to HIPAA compliant data to be able to utilize that information. If your institution wants to learn more about generating HIPAA compliant medical record data on your residents, and that includes things such as vaccination and other pertinent personal information, then please reach out to Client Services and we can give you more details on that. So only a institutional administrator has access to edit and manage institutional templates, and this allows them to take templates and move the order of items, add new items, or remove items from that, and then save that particular template. On the other hand, you also have the ability to create a new template where you give it a name. If you want to make it available to all departments within your institution, you would select Institution Template, and then you would select the fields that you want to include and click Save. That's going to give you specific templates that are then available at the department level or at the institutional level. So again, the entire idea here is for us to have these templates as ready-made reports. So if, for example, I want to be able to run frequent BLS, ACLS, ATLS, PALS expiration reports to see who has expired and who doesn't have expired data for a given academic year, notice I can save this report and call this my 2023-2024 ACLS, PALS, ATLS report. If I mark this as institutional, again, it's only available to the global administrator to do that, then it will be available for everyone in the institution. So if, for example, I want to create an ACLS compliance report for the entire institution of all my residents and all my fellows, I could create that one report and make it available as an institutional report so that any administrator in any department can simply click on that from the favorites report. So when I save this report, it will now be available under favorites. That's why it takes me straight to favorites and it makes it available as my 2023-24 report. So it becomes a single click report that I can export to CVS, Excel, Word, or print it, that includes all the data showing me all the expiration details that I'm looking for. So this becomes a very important report for you to be able to access demographic data. So now as we're wrapping up the end of this webinar, we want to focus on analytics for program improvement. What are some of the strategies that you can use to improve your program and address areas of excellence. So in order to do that, we really need to focus on all this data that you're importing and all this data that you're utilizing. There's data you can import from the ACGME, there's data that's being submitted by users, and there's automatic data. There's calculations that the system is doing for you automatically. Well, by utilizing our APE module, the system will take all of that data, allowing you to manage your program evaluation committee, allowing you to review performance documents and plans, and monitor your action plans over time. So you can actually review your data, set plans and agendas, and monitor to make sure that those agendas and plans are being properly implemented over time. So for over a 5-year period, the APE module will automatically track all your action plans, whether they're the PDSA action plans, Plan, Do, Study, Act, or your SWOT plans, strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The system will track all of that for you to tell you what has been and hasn't been implemented. It will send automatic email notifications to administrators for plans that are coming due. So it's important for you to keep in mind that the APE module is really designed to take advantage of all the hard work you're already doing. So what are you doing? Well, as an administrator, you're already going into the system and you're assigning evaluations. Well, the APE module will look at all the evaluation assignments and tell you automatically within the module what your compliance status is. All your compliance correspondence that you get from the ACGME, you're able to upload that into My Portfolio under your administrative section, and the system will keep track of those compliance correspondence and specific, whether they're citations or there are areas for improvement that need to be addressed. It will track those for you and tell you citations and AFIs that need to be addressed or have already been addressed. You're able to put in all your in-training exam scores for individual trainees into My Portfolio. You're also able to put your program's overall exam performance and identify specific areas of weakness. And as the program evaluation committee, they can see that information and decide what needs to be done to address those specific areas of weakness. You can also export from ACGME website, you can export your resident faculty surveys as well as your well-being surveys. You're able to export the raw data out of ADS and directly import that into MyEvaluations. We have a separate webinar on the APE module, so I'm not going to go through the details of how to do that. I simply want you to understand that you are able to do that, and the system will then monitor your performance over time and graphically show you how your performance is coming together over the course of time, allowing you to see where are our specific weaknesses and areas for improvement that we need to focus on, what are the action plans we need to set up in order to address those specific weaknesses. So these are focusing on all the administrative submissions. So in other words, this is the work that you are already doing by building schedules, assigning evaluations, uploading your ACGME survey information into MyEvaluations. All this detail is already being utilized in the APE module to show you performance. Then there's an entire section that's doing automatic data calculations for you. That means when you collect milestone and EPA data, well, the system is automatically showing that milestone and EPA data for your program evaluation committee, allowing them to see how is the program doing. So here, just a very quick glance of your APE module I'm bringing up. When I go into, and I've zoomed in on this for everybody to be able to see it, so excuse some of the overlap that's happening here. When I go under my resident section, evaluation and milestone performance, it's automatically showing me my PGY specific performance as a summary for me to review. I can zoom in on these individual graphs and review the details. But all that data is automatically being calculated. You don't have to run a report. Specific scholarly activities. You schedule conferences already. Every conference is a scholarly activity, both for the presenter and the attendee. All of that data is automatically tracked in the APE module, indicating what the scholarly activities are for specific groups. So here is, again, as an example, and I'm super zoomed in, but I'm under the resident section. I select scholarly activities, and I can see the scholarly activity breakdown for my department as well. All the procedures and patient logs, whether they are put through MyEvaluations, or if you've imported them from ACGME because you're general surgery, OB-GYN, where those case logs have been submitted to ADS, they will automatically show up in your APE module and give you statistics. Your evaluation performance, goals and objectives, have they been reviewed or not? ACGME citations and AFIs, your clinical hour compliance, and all the quality improvement and any visa requirements. All of that is tracked through the APE module automatically for you. Now, I gave you a quick screenshot of the APE module in its current format. There is a new iteration that will be released later on this year that will have a new look to it, and will have a lot of additional functionality. We are also adding a new section in here. You can see it's called Meeting Manager, which will actually allow you to document each one of your PEC meetings, where you can document all your meeting minutes and all the details directly on there as well. And that's going to be made available later on this year. A quick footnote for those of you that are planning on using the APE module. It's very important that before you start using the APE module that you set up your core personnel. So under the menu option, evaluations, program management reports, you want to make sure that you access manage core personnel and you select your core faculty and your core residents or core fellows. The APE module will only consider the data for those core personnel. The system will not consider data for users that are not selected in here. So it's very important that you access the menu option evaluations and you go under the program management reports, you go to manage core personnel in order to select for each academic year who are your core faculty and your core trainees. These would be equivalent to the same people that you have listed on ADS. That's just a quick footnote. This is not meant to be a training session for the APE module, but a focus on data management and how you should centrally manage that data. So some of the areas I've already mentioned. One area was milestone performance. All the calculations are done by PGY level for you. So this is automatic data calculation. All your scholarly activity data in terms of submissions that are put through my portfolio, conferences that you've scheduled, and specific PEC reviews, all of that are documented on here. You have an automatic data integration for your evaluations, where the system is going to show you all the evaluations that were completed on residents, what the scores are on the faculty and on programs, and everything is also shown to you in a graphical format as well. So it's not just focusing on, excuse me, it's not just focusing on the individual scores, but it'll present a nice graphical layout for you as well. So that's under the program section. We're looking at program evaluation performance. So each individual evaluation is automatically listed here. I can select any one of these evaluations and I can go into detail and get a detailed breakdown of individual performance. I also have all the numerical breakdowns made available as well as a graphical layout. And I have the ability to print those charts directly through through the module as well. The automatic data integration also provides you with your goals and objectives, showing you goals and objectives that have not been reviewed are highlighted in yellow, showing you areas where the total review is less than 80%, so it's intentionally highlighted for you. This allows the PEC to review those goals and objectives and see what changes they need to make. All your clinical hour compliance issues are automatically documented in here by rotation. All your ACGME citations that you've uploaded through My Portfolio through the administrative document section are listed here with all the action plans that are tied to them. All the quality improvement project recommendations that are uploaded or recommended by users are shown in here as well. And the last section is your APE monitoring section that's available as well. So in the last tab here under monitoring, you have a listing of all of the citations over the action plans, citations, and SWATs that are listed over the previous 5 years and this year, where it allows you to look at incompleted action plans and implemented action plans. And what's really great, it allows you to reprioritize things. So you can actually take things and change those action plan priorities in order to track what has been reviewed and what has not been reviewed. So those are the different action plan sections, different citation sections that are available for you. And these are for implemented action plans and implemented citation plans. And my last slide for you here is on APE reports, which you can generate as well. Those APE reports are available to you from the menu option Evaluations under Program Management Reports. You have your annual program evaluation reports. If you watch the webinar on the APE module, we also talk about common program requirement reports and institutional requirement reports as well. So with the APE module report, all of the sections of the APE, you can select them individually. And based on each section you select, there are specific subsections that you can select in order to generate reports on that, which will be very important for a site visit, for you to generate your compliance reports to make available to site visitors. So we pretty much were able to complete everything within our 2-hour session. And I want to open it up for any questions now.